This is Cult Confessions with Christy and Josie. Welcome to our podcast.
Let's talk about why we wanted to start a podcast in the first place. I think that, this is something we both wanted to talk about for a really long time, especially publicly and not just, to each other, which we do a lot of. The podcast, starting this was kind of your idea, and you just let me kind of be a part of it, which is fun. So talk a little bit about, why we want to do this.
I think that you, and obviously your church and my husband's church,
Right.
really inspired all of this. And your story specifically just really inspired all of this and made me want to start one with you, because I'm like, who else am I gonna do this with other than someone who has gone through it personally? And I thankfully have never gone through anything as horrific as a lot of the people I know. But it made me want to fight for you guys. And I think all of us are very
I
antsy
love
to
that.
do something and make a change
Yeah.
and talk about it, speak about it, and not be silenced anymore
Yep.
with our stories that that we have, and be a voice for everyone else to come forward.
Yeah. And I don't think that we can talk about why this is happening without talking about Let Us Pray, right? That documentary and the Preacher Boys podcast
Shout out to the Preacher
opened
Boys.
so much. Yes. Shout out to Preacher Boys. Eric's incredible.
Yes, go like and subscribe.
But I have never felt so seen from when the documentary came out. I remember watching the documentary and listening to all of the stories of abuse and sitting there and being like, oh my God, thank goodness that Faith wasn't this bad. Thank goodness that it wasn't everybody, that was just me. And then, Nathan reached out and we all started talking and hearing all of these extra stories and the horrors that went on behind, church doors, shattered this whole perception of what they had built for so long. And honestly, I feel like I've been really quiet about it for a really long time. And I haven't felt like if I talked about it that I would be believed, because I wasn't for a really long time in the church. People believed parts of it, but not all of it. And I'm done. I'm really, really done not talking about this and not moving on from it, because it's been a huge detriment to me in my adult life. Trying to get over the things that they did and the culture that was built. And I'm done. I'm really, really done letting them have that level of control over my life anymore. And I think the way that, we start moving on and start healing from it is just talking about it.
Exactly. And I think that it's going to be a really great outlet for all of us to share our stories and to give a warning to anyone else out there to not allow them to silence you, because there's a thing called statute of limitations, and a lot of times you don't have as much time as you think you do. And with the majority of our friends that have had issues with the church, they've been silenced and they've missed the opportunity to go after them with criminal charges because of the statute of limitations. So our podcast is here to give others voices and to hopefully inspire others to come forward and hopefully, bring people on to share their stories.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part is just letting people talk. People that haven't been able to talk for a really long time. So, in the spirit of letting people talk, do you want to share a little bit about like how you grew up and your like journey through dealing with the IFB, which is Independent Fundamental Baptist?
Yeah, so we are going to be specializing in IFB.
Yes.
Specifically, we want to encourage any religious, like cult
Yep.
of any sort, like to come on and talk about their experiences with them. But at the same time, we are here to talk specifically about our experiences right now, and that was through the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement. And if you haven't heard of that, go ahead and go watch Let Us
Watch
Pray
Let
on
Us Pray.
HBO. HBO, please sponsor us. Um, no, but seriously, it has shown a light on the church and all of the issues that happens, especially because it's independent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Independent.
um, yeah, and there not being good rules surrounding predators and abusers just being passed around. And I mean, that was really the main reason I left church.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up, I was born in San Diego, and I went to a Christian school down there. And then
Was
when I
it
was
Baptist or
12,
was it just Christian?
it was just a Christian school. It was super chill and very like, believe in God, but it's
Right. Like more
not,
non denominational than like
yeah, not
hardcore.
too
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah. It was specifically like a Christian school. It wasn't like
Okay.
Baptist or anything. And so it was very chill and very normal. And then when I was 12, we moved up to Oregon, Salem, Oregon, and we started going to Willamette Valley Baptist Church. And it was like we literally got invited by our landlord to go
Oh,
to the church. And the very first Sunday that we went there, the next day we were enrolled in school. And it was a Baptist
yikes.
school, a Baptist private school. And we had to wear uniforms. We had to learn,
The
like, we
uniforms.
basically had all of these new rules that we never had before
So in your
placed on us.
previous school, you didn't have to wear uniforms?
No,
That's crazy.
we didn't have to follow rules that the school set for us, really.
That's
We were
crazy.
like, we were allowed to do whatever we wanted, basically, outside of school without like repercussions or whatever.
Mm,
And so when we moved, it was like an extreme like culture shock essentially for us. It
yeah.
was just like we had to obey all these different rules that we never had to before, like not going to the movie theater
Mm, yep.
and just very specific things that were just like, wait, why is the church and the school having to control us in that way? And I remember sobbing, like sobbing, so upset about all the new rules that we had to follow. And
Oh,
I was a very anxious child as it was. And
right.
so to have to like follow all these rules and all basically be a perfectionist. And that's what I was. I was a perfectionist until I left. And that was a huge reason. You asked me about why I left the church. It was specifically because I was tired of being a perfectionist. I was
Mm-hmm.
tired of being
It's
whatever
so much pressure.
everyone else wanted me to be. And when I stopped going to church, I felt like a huge weight was lifted.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even know that that's what I was like, that I was carrying that. I had
I
no
remember
idea.
that feeling. I had a very similar experience when I left. It was just
Yeah.
this huge relief that I didn't even know that I needed.
Yeah. And a lot of stuff like changed after too. Like I used to have so much back pain. I used to have so many migraines, and a lot of that stopped after leaving church. So I know that a lot of like my stress and anxiety has come from church and having to be
Yeah.
a perfectionist and like literally being as perfect as possible but still getting in trouble for something. So it just felt impossible to to exist
Yeah.
in that circle. And so that was kind of my story of just I well, after high school, um, I actually ended up going to West Coast Baptist College and I went there for 2 years. And I honestly just went because that was kind of what we were supposed to do.
That's what you do.
But I
You go to
never
Bible
felt,
college.
yeah, I never felt like I wanted to be a teacher or a pastor's wife or anything, a secretary. I didn't feel called to be any of those things. And I wanted to be a missionary, obviously, because that's, you only
How
have like two
old were you when
choices.
you got your first calling?
I was, I think I was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
It was pretty soon after I moved. It was, and you know what, like the Baptist movement is so heavy that like I feel like right away I was like called to be whatever they were preaching about because it was just like
It's
you just get
intense.
so into it and you believe it and you want to do everything you can for God. And so yeah, so I was called to be a missionary, like to the point where I broke up with this guy just because he wasn't called to be a missionary. And I think we were like 14 years old. Like it
Oh
was
yeah, that
wild.
that conviction, it hits.
Yeah.
Like
I was really like seriously, we weren't like officially dating or anything. We were just
sure.
like we liked each other. It was obvious that we liked each other, but I ended up it was at winter camp with Pastor Cavaness, which he's
Mm,
written some very interesting books about
yes.
sex.
We'll talk
And
about those later.
yes, we will. And it was wild because I was just like I felt so, like when you're in these camp environments, you're just kind of drilled all of these things and all of these ideas.
It's
And I was
nonstop.
pushed. Yeah, I was pushed into like believing that like, oh my God, if I'm not dating a person that believes the same exact thing and wants the same exact thing for me at
You're
14 years
unequally
old,
yoked.
it's not going to work out and it's not God's will. And
Yep.
so I broke up with him and I felt so bad. And I was like, I'm sorry, like I'm called to be a missionary and I just can't be with you. And like looking
Oh,
back, I'm like, oh my God, that's so
oh,
embarrassing.
that poor kid.
It's so embarrassing, but I mean, it worked out, whatever, but it was just I just felt I really feel bad like to this day, so sorry. Sorry. You know who you are.
Yeah, the camp environments are so intense, and I think
Yeah.
everybody who's grown up IFB have gone to some of those camps, and like it is just nonstop, like brainwashing. Honestly, it's nonstop drilling in
Yeah.
your head. It's nonstop preachers. It's a cycle. You go morning, you go afternoon, you go in the night. You have some games in between, all with a spiritual message, like, and you're not allowed to like really interact with a lot of like the
Yeah.
opposite gender and all of that kind of stuff, but like the boys and the girls sit separate, like all of those things,
Yeah.
and it is just drilled into
It's a
your
literal like
head.
spiritual boot camp
It is a spiritual boot
and
camp, absolutely.
for like brainwashing. It's wild.
You think of
It's
summer camp
wild.
and you're just like, I want to go kayaking, I want to go,
Mhm.
maybe shooting or something, like I want to shoot a bow and
Instead,
arrow.
instead
Nope,
we're
you
over here
sit
like,
there
am
and
I
you listen to
actually
preachers.
saved? Am I
No, oh
actually
my god.
saved? Do I
The
need to get
amount
saved again?
Yes, dude, the amount of times in a camp when I was like, I'm absolutely going to hell. I am not saved. I
Exactly.
am absolutely doomed. I am
I think we all have
terrified.
felt that way. Yeah, we've all felt that way at summer
How many
camp or any
times,
camp.
okay, how many times did you get saved?
Oh my God, I don't even know.
Three,
I think
minus
I did
three.
it maybe maybe three publicly, but like personally, like I would say the little prayer like to myself
Yeah. I
often
went
because I'm
through a
like, I want to make sure,
phase. I went through a phase where I would say like every day, several times a day. And
right?
I think it was like maybe 14 or 15 at the time.
Hmm.
And it was our youth pastor at the time, and he had taught like a chapel. Because I mean, we went to private school, we went to Baptist school, we had chapels. Ours was every Thursday. Um,
Hmm.
and he had preached about hell and how scary it was and how you absolutely have to make sure that you're saved and otherwise you were going to burn for eternity and all that good stuff. And I remember just being so, so scared. And I would say it to
Yeah.
myself every day, several
Yeah.
times a
That's
day,
exactly
like,
how I
because it
felt.
was just in
Yeah.
my head. If I wasn't learning something or if I wasn't, actively participating in something that took my brain power, that was what I was doing. And that
Yeah.
was, oh my gosh, I was so
Well,
anxious.
yeah, and it's something, yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to raise my kids in that
Yeah.
environment, is just how scared I was all the time of
Mm-hmm.
burning in hell, of like my grandparents burning in hell because they didn't believe in the right God or the right
Yup.
religion. Like, even if they were good people or like religious people, they were going to be burning in hell. So, thanks for that
I know.
trauma.
Appreciate it, guys.
But seriously, I think that more than anything affected me. Like my grandparents, I'm like, I love them with all my heart and I want them to be
Yes.
in
Oh
heaven
my
too. And
gosh.
I was like very, very young when they died. I was like 11, 10 or 11 or something.
Mm.
And I was just like, I
That's
don't
heartbreaking.
like, I don't want them to be burning in hell. Like I'm thinking about them and thinking about them burning in hell.
So
Like
I
it's
would
so
my okay,
sad.
my mom's parents, so my maternal grandparents. I mean, they divorced when they were I mean, way before I came into the picture when my mom was a kid. But they were IFB. And so my mom was
Mhm.
raised IFB. She's been going to church since before she was born. That's the way she raised me. My dad is first generation. So he wasn't saved, didn't get into the church until he was 22. And so this was all new for him. And so his parents, his sister, like they are not IFB. They don't want, I mean, as far as I know, anything to do with it. And they've always been very clear about that. They respect our right to our beliefs, but it's not for them. And
Mhm.
I remember sobbing uncontrollably, like so many times, because I was told that they were going to hell. And if I didn't witness hard enough, if I didn't reach them, because it was my job as a
Yeah.
Christian, then it would be my fault that they were burning in hell.
Yeah. It's
And
it's a lot to put on a child.
this is when I was like a
And
kid, like 6, 7 years
yeah,
old. And
exactly.
it,
It's so much to put on a child. And like let's not even the rapture, okay? The rapture is literally my husband's biggest fear when he
mm,
was a kid.
yeah.
Like he
I
thought
would
that
have
he was left
nightmares. I would
behind.
have nightmares about like everybody's gone.
Yeah,
Not even nightmares, but like in actual reality, I would come into the house if nobody was there. That was my first
exactly.
thought. It was like,
Hmm.
oh my god, where did everybody go? I guess I wasn't really saved, even though I thought I was. Oh my god, I'm dead. Like
Yeah,
is what I thought. It was. Oh, it was
it's so
horrible.
sad. It's so sad. Um, but yeah, there's a lot that I'm just like, I don't believe that it's right to really teach these young children that are so like innocent and so
Impressionable.
um yeah, and they don't need the extra anxieties on their life. Like they don't need that. Need they just need to be able to like feel safe and feel
Yeah.
loved and to allow their brain to develop before they're taught these insane ideas. Like no matter what it is, it's like we should give it a little bit before we tell these kids that they're going to burn in
But
hell
that's
when they
not
die.
effective. Let's be honest, that's not effective for a
Yeah.
cult, for or
Yeah.
any high control religion,
Well,
even
yeah,
if you
they
don't
don't want
consider it a
us to
cult.
have any cognitive
It's not effective
function.
if you don't start training them from the minute they are born. They will develop their own ideas. They will start thinking things that you don't want them to think. And
Yeah.
you end up with rebellious teenagers. You end up with adults who don't believe, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I was a very rebellious
You were
teenager, but
rebellious though,
I
yeah.
was so rebellious by Baptist standards for a lot of reasons. But it's not effective to raise children in the right way. It's not effective to their end goal.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, so much changed for me after becoming pregnant, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I was pregnant, I was like
Were you still in the church when you got pregnant with Arya?
No. No,
Okay.
I think it was probably the year before that we had an incident happen at my church, and after that incident, I was like, "No, there's no way I'm ever going back to church.
Okay.
There's no way I'm ever having my kids in that environment. Like, there's
Yeah.
no, I'm done. I'm so tired of hearing about these sexual abusers and just abusers in general, of
Yeah.
them being passed around and it being hush-hushed
The pedophile
and
shuffle.
not knowing who these people are. And like I'm not sending my kids to a nursery where I don't know these people personally, like,
You have
or enough.
no control over what your children are subjected to
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
IFB. Like the people
And
that are
you know
put
what?
in positions of
I
power, you
really
have no choice.
I really don't blame my parents at all, because the thing is, I don't even think they know
Mm-hmm.
what they were telling us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we were told to put band-aids on our nipples to keep the boys from seeing them when we were cold,
Yeah.
which
Okay,
is
so
super dangerous. That's
how old were
insanely
you?
dangerous.
How old were you
I
when
was
you got
like
told that? Because that was
probably
I'm
like
sure it was before you had like real boobs. Like
no, I was probably 15 or 16. I probably
okay.
had them, but that's really dangerous. Like, you should
Yeah.
not be putting tape substance on your
No.
nipples at all.
Nope.
And stuff like that where I'm like, "Wait, why I I didn't even think about my nipples until now." Like, what?
See, I think because abuse for me started at such a young age, I was always really, really conscious about my body. Like, not even in the sense that
Yeah.
I was self conscious, like I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't, but it was so much more than that. It was so. I wore baggy clothes. I couldn't wear
Hmm.
anything tight. I had to make sure everything was like, up to here, the three finger
Yeah.
rule, three fingers from your collarbone. That's how high your shirts could be. Like, I didn't start like pushing those boundaries until I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
when I
see,
was a
I think that's
kid,
the
like,
difference. Yeah.
mm,
That's the difference. Like, so
my body was
I
bad when I was a
honestly,
child.
yeah, I honestly, well, we're hypersexualized
Yes.
as the second that, like, you're a woman,
Yep.
literally from the womb, you're sexualized.
You're born with a
And
vagina,
yep,
hypersexualized.
yep. And to the point where people won't even change their daughter's diapers, which is disgusting. Like, if you
Yep.
can't change your own daughter's diapers,
Yep.
you need to look a little bit deeper.
Um, if your husband refuses to change your daughter's diaper for that reason, get the fuck out. That is so
Yeah,
dangerous.
it's
Like,
so it's so sick. It's disgusting. Um, I how can you ever sexualize your own child if you're trying if your child is sexual to you in any way, you need to go
you have a problem.
into
Like,
the institute or something. Like, please.
get some help. Like, get some
Yes,
help.
get
And
help. Get help.
I will even go so far as to say, like, if you are feeling that way because of what was drilled into you as a kid and because you were exposed to all of this brainwashing, it's understandable why you would feel that way, but you are responsible to get help. Like,
Yeah.
we cannot
Yeah. And
accept that. That's unacceptable.
for me, I honestly, my parents have always been so good with not saying much about my body, where I didn't really
Mm.
have any, like, if anything, the body dysmorphia I have is that I feel very beautiful and, like, skinnier, and
You
you
are
know what I mean? Like,
beautiful.
I feel more beautiful and skinnier than I probably am. So,
Mm.
like, I'm on the opposite, where I feel very, like, my parents drilled it into me that I was very beautiful, right?
Oh,
And they would always say stuff like, "I love your smile." Like, a lot of positive stuff.
I
So they
love that
drilled
for
into
you.
me a lot of good things. But then the church,
Mm-hmm.
like, I was Josie, I started my period in Oregon. Okay?
Okay.
Literally right after we moved. And I
Like your first
remember
one
being
ever?
yes, I remember being insanely depressed, like suicidal depressed.
Wow.
And yeah, and um then after that, like, literally becoming a woman within the IFB is
Mm.
awful
It's
because then I'm like,
traumatic, honestly. It's traumatic.
well, all I can think about is how my body affects other people.
Especially
When
men.
before, I never thought about any of those things. Like, I never even thought about my nipples until she said those things.
Yeah.
I never thought about, oh, my boobs, like, they could be
A
a
problem. A
danger,
stumbling
a
block.
stumbling block for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Like the length of my shirt, the length of my skirt, the length of my sleeves, my shoulders, my knees, they're sexual. Like, none of that. I never thought about any of that until church, until the IFB. And I was like, there's so much on us for us to think about. And then like when they do something, we feel like it's our fault. Like when someone tries to touch you
Mm-hmm.
or tries to
Yep.
do something to you, it's our fault somehow.
Yeah, apparently I flirted when I was 8 years old. And I mean, like, I'm not going to say that I wasn't a kid that flirted, because I think kids just flirt, like, in
Kids are
general. Like,
friendly.
we're
Kids are
friendly. Yeah,
friendly.
it's not flirting. It's
It's not flirting.
friendliness. Yeah.
They're friendly.
No, and
They're
that
friendly
was,
and they're trusting.
yeah, that was his excuse. He said that I threw myself at him,
Mm.
because I was 8 years old and laughing and smiling and,
And how old was he, Josie?
15 when it started? 16? 15 or
Yeah.
16? Yeah. So he's about 6.5 years older than me. So yeah, he was
Yeah.
15, I think, when it started. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine thinking an 8-year-old was flirting with me
Nope.
when I was 15.
Nope. At
No.
least not in an ironic sense. Like, there
Yeah.
were, like, because, okay, so I worked in nursery, and I worked in, like, 2s and 3s, toddler nursery. I worked there, I think I started when I was, like, 12. Like, it was every other Sunday. It was me and my volleyball coach, and love my volleyball coach, by the way. She's incredible. But, like, I loved that time because we got to just hang out, and she was a little rebel child when she was growing up IFB as well. So we really bonded, and we had a lot of fun. But, like, these little boys would come up to me and like ask me to marry them, or cute adorable
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I cannot imagine looking at that from a child and saying that it's
Hmm.
somehow sexual, or somehow
Yeah.
there's actual any meaning behind it other than, oh my god, that's adorable. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you are a flirty kid, if you're a friendly kid, it's okay to be a friendly kid. And
Yeah.
like, it doesn't need to be
Well,
taken as anything
if you
serious.
think about it, like my daughter, she's 5,
Mm-hmm.
and she'll just be like, I'm trying to teach her safe people and unsafe
Sure.
people, and body, you know, safety and boundaries.
Autonomy.
And yes, and so she'll be like, "Oh, that person was really nice and they didn't take me away." Just like
What? Explain that. What?
I'm like, okay, so this one time she was in a store and she was just talking to everybody and like
Uh-huh.
going up to them. So then I was like, "Hey, you have to be really careful because we don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yep.
might want to take you away or something from mommy and we don't know." So
Right.
ever since then, she relates it and she'll just be like,
They
"Mommy,
didn't
this
take me
person was so
away.
nice. They didn't take me away."
Oh my lord.
And I'm like, "Okay, just because someone's nice doesn't mean that they're like not uh,
No. And it's so hard to
they're
explain
so
that to
innocent.
kids. It's
They're
so
so
like,
innocent and like you
mm,
were innocent, you know what I mean? Like of just you were just being friendly
yeah,
and someone was being friendly to you, but then they took advantage
taking
of you."
advantage. Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of which, I want you to tell me your um how you grew up and like
Yeah.
where it all started. Where did the
So,
IFB start for you?
since before I was born and raised IFB, and I was IFB until the day I graduated high school. Um,
Okay.
so I
Where did you live when you were
so I
born?
grew up in Mount Vernon, Washington, so over like
Okay.
near Seattle, for anybody who doesn't know Washington geography. Um, and we lived there until I was 8.5 or so. We moved in December of 2006 to Spokane. Um,
Okay.
the church that I went to in Mount Vernon, Bible Baptist Church, I'm still close, at least close-ish, with the family that was the pastor, like the pastor's family of that church. They now live, I mean, a few hours from me. I saw them recently. They are really good people. So credit where credit is due. I enjoyed my time a lot in that church. I had friends. We were homeschooled, but we did Friday school, and we, would
Mhm.
hang out with other homeschool kids. I really enjoyed my time in that church. I I was still an anxious kid. Like I've always been an anxious kid, but I
Yeah.
don't ever remember feeling unsafe at that church. I don't ever remember feeling the way that I feel about faith
Yeah.
in that church ever. So, not all churches are bad. That doesn't mean that there aren't bad people in good churches, but I mean, credit where
Mhm.
credit is due.
Yeah.
So, when I was,
I think that there's always going to be predators everywhere. I think the
yes,
issue with the IFB specifically is just that
the
they try to
management.
yeah, they try to sweep it under the rug and have
Yeah.
God forgive it and move the person along to a different place. That's the biggest
And
thing.
I mean, granted, I was very young when I went to church there, obviously, but I never remember any of those
Anything bad,
kind of
yeah.
situations. Now, I'm not saying that never happened. And if anybody had that experience, I definitely don't want to invalidate it. But I'm just saying, as an 8 year old
Mhm.
kid, I don't remember
You had a
anything
fine
bad.
experience, yeah.
Yeah, I was happy there. And
Mhm.
then we had to move. And so we moved to Spokane. And the church that we went to, Mount Vernon Bible Baptist, was really small compared to Faith. Faith was like double the size. It was a huge building. It had so many people, and it was so overwhelming. And the culture was really different there. At Bible Baptist, we never. I don't ever remember giving my pastor a hug, and
Mhm.
because he just didn't really hug children. Like, I
Yeah.
know that he loved us as a pastor is supposed to love, his congregation. And we were very close with that family, again, still are. But I don't ever remember giving my pastor a hug, or any of the other men in the church, like, other than,
Yeah.
like, kids my own age. And I don't, and I mean, I look back on that as a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was never an issue. So we go to Faith, and immediately, like, all these little kids running around. I mean, I say little kids, they were my age, um, hugging everybody. Like, teenage boys, we all hugged Pastor, we would hug deacons. Like, it was so much more touchy than
Mhm.
Bible Baptist ever was. And that was, aside from like the size of the church and the size of the congregation, that was the first thing I remember being like really different. Um, was everybody was hugging each other, and it was really weird.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel like comfortable with that. Like, I would hug my friends that were girls, or something like that. So I did. Like, when I found my two best friends there, we would hug each other, and we did, like, throughout our entire, like, elementary school, middle school, high school experience. But I never hugged guys, and I did at Faith. And it wasn't so, it felt weird for me, but it wasn't like looked down, and it wasn't weird there. Everybody was doing it. Um,
Mhm.
and nobody said anything about it. Nobody said anything was wrong with it or anything like that. And so, I mean, eventually, you know, that's kind of how the abuse started. Was, oh, I
Yeah.
can hug you here, maybe I can hug you when nobody's around, and etc. All of those other
Yeah.
kinds of things that had happened after that. I even remember talking
Mhm.
to my pastor about that. I'm just like, I don't like this, but this is what everybody else does, and I want to be a good Christian. I want to love everybody and forgive everybody, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
That's so weird. I feel like with the Willamette, it was very harsh rules and very strict and all of that comes with the IFB.
Right.
But they were very good with like, you can't be alone with the opposite
No
gender
touchy.
ever. Yeah, no touching. The 6-inch rule was very much a real thing. And I think that's what kept a lot of people safe. I
Yeah.
mean, for what I know, for when Pastor McElroy was there, it seems like most things were handled appropriately. Um, but when we had Pastor Donley, which he came from Spokane,
Sure did.
things changed. And it just shows how bad it was at Faith. Like, there's so much
Yeah,
that has happened
Faith was
at Faith
bad.
Baptist Church in Spokane, Washington.
Faith was bad. I still believe it's bad. I
Mhm.
don't think that's a safe place for anybody, honestly.
No,
Like,
anytime I talk about this, I tell people stay away from that church.
yep.
You don't know, what you're going to get yourself into there. Like, they just cover things up, and it's really scary and really sad.
Yeah. And it's hard because, I still question the malicious intent of Pastor Boyle. I I believe he was negligent. I don't believe he handled any of the situations that were brought up to him appropriately. But I seriously question whether or not he meant for all of this to happen. Regardless, there's no excuse. I want to make that super clear. There
Mhm.
is no excuse for the things that happened to me or other people there that were covered up and only now being, brought to light, and only now, you know, trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
But I still really struggle with believing that he maliciously intended for these things to happen, and everything that happened after. Like, everything that happened after I left the church, everything that happened to other people after they left, everything that happened to the people that still go there or still went there during those times. Like, I really, I really struggle to believe that he intended to be a bad person. And maybe that's just
I
brainwashing. I
mean,
don't know.
yeah, I think it might be because the way that I look at it is that he's just as guilty as the people that have done the actual abuse.
I
He
I would agree with that.
he he's an adult,
Right.
and you were 8. You were 8
See, and
years
that's what I'm
old.
saying. Like, he was absolutely negligent. Like, he did not handle these situations appropriately. I believe that with all my heart. Like, no
I honestly
doubts.
don't know how he sleeps at night with the things that he's covered up. I
I don't
honestly
know.
don't know.
Well, and
Um,
honestly, like, I think that I do. I think I know, because he doesn't see them as bad. Because he doesn't see them as something that he did wrong. He doesn't see them as something that anybody else did wrong. He believes that he handled the situations appropriately, and we are just, heathens and sinners, and we are strayed away from church, strayed away from God, and that automatically nullifies anything that we have to say or think or feel. And that's how I believe that's how he justifies it, because he doesn't actually believe that he did anything wrong.
so the connection between your church and mine is that your ex pastor's assistant
Right.
came to be my pastor.
Your
That
head
was my
pastor,
senior
like
year.
senior pastor. Yeah.
Yes, that was my senior year in school. And so I had the pastor's son as my only, one and only school like classmate.
Hmm.
Um, and they brought those abusive tendencies with them
Yep.
and the cover-ups with
Yep.
them. So like it just, Pastor Boyle, which is Faith Baptist Church in Spokane, that's the pastor there,
Yep.
married me and my husband,
Yep.
and also pastored Only. And for
Well, because you
me,
were
it makes
still
me,
IFB when you got married.
yes, it makes me sick to my stomach to know the things that they've done and the things that they've covered up and known about. And there's no way that they don't feel any sort of guilt at all. Like, to me, if they don't, there's something I mean, there is something really wrong with them.
Yeah.
But I just I can't believe all of the things that they've covered up. Like, what is it, like 14 plus accounts now that we have?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not all of them are from victims directly, so I want to be really careful about speaking for other victims.
Hmm.
But like, in the conversations that we've had with people that we know that have gone there, the things that we've observed, in addition to real victims coming forward
Actual
and telling their
accounts,
stories,
yes.
I think we're at 16,
Yeah.
like within like a maybe 10 to 15 year time frame.
Which to me, that's a lot. That's a
It is a
lot
lot.
for
It is a lot.
any church to have that many
I
things
think the biggest thing is
hidden.
that nobody knew about the other ones. Like, that's a
Mhm.
lot
Well, you
in and
didn't
of
know about
itself.
anything.
I had no idea. Because, like I
You
said, I
thought it was
remember,
just you.
I really thought it was just me. I remember watching Let Us Pray and sitting there and being like, thank God this didn't happen to anybody else. Thank God it was just me. Thank
Yeah.
God that faith
Well,
wasn't
that's
like
why,
these
like,
other churches. It's not the
with
truth.
my situation, I was touched inappropriately by
Mm-hmm.
someone in my church, and I'm not really ready to talk about it
That's
quite yet
okay.
because I'm still doing some research about situations.
Right.
And so I, right away, I was like, I told them to stop and so on and so forth. But I've asked around, and I feel like there's not very many cases within my church
Mm-hmm.
until the Donleys came.
Mm-hmm.
And um, there is some shady stuff surrounding the person that touched me inappropriately. Um, but
That
I'm
was under
still
Pastor
trying to,
McElroy, right?
yes, I'm still
Okay.
trying to figure that out. To see if there were anyone else, like if there was anyone else that was truly like abused by this person.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, it's like I think Willamette did pretty good. So I haven't heard very many people coming forward for the stuff underneath Pastor McElroy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know that there was abuse like done within people's homes that is like different than like the church
Like
actually.
domestic violence type things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that's a whole separate issue. Like, and we'll
Yeah.
probably get into that in like later episodes, talking about like
Yeah.
how the church supports domestic violence, because they do.
That and the system just like really being a good like place for that abuse and stuff. Like
Yeah.
one of my friends that I want to have on, she was saying that she believes that that's why they chose the Baptist church that they chose because
Mm.
they believe that they wouldn't ask questions
Wow.
um about their home life and stuff and how they were running it. So,
That's
yeah,
awful.
but there's a lot of things that we want to talk about.
Yes.
We have so many different ideas and we're
We're
just
gonna
so
do all of
excited.
them.
We're so excited to start this podcast and I just I want to thank you for saying yes to
Oh my
starting a
gosh,
podcast with me.
stop. I was so
Um,
excited when you brought it up. Like, I mean, as soon as you brought up the idea, like when we all first started talking, like what, 6 months ago now? Like, as soon as
mhm.
you brought that up, I was like, ooh, I want to do this. This sounds so much
Yeah.
fun. But I wasn't going to be like, let me do this. I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not. So I was
Yeah.
really hoping that you would ask me to do it.
I
And I'm
was
so
like,
excited.
yeah, I was just like, I don't know who to do it with. I don't know. And then I was like, well, I feel like Josie would be really good because like we vibe well and I
I
just
like to
feel like
yap.
I also feel like you have just such a good like we have different perspectives, right? Like
Yes, yes, absolutely.
you still believe in God.
I do.
I don't.
Yep.
Um we both don't go to church. We kind of don't
Right.
believe in church.
Nope.
Right?
Absolutely right. I do
I don't want to
not.
speak for you.
No, I don't believe in detrimental organized religion, and I think
Yeah.
most organized religion is detrimental in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that there's not a any good churches out there, but I'm saying that most
Yeah.
of them are bad. I think that I can confidently say that most of them are bad.
Yeah. I mean, if we look
Um,
at there's a lot of reasons.
yeah,
I believe in science a lot more now, which
right.
we weren't taught a lot of that.
Nope.
Um, but yes, I believe in science more than faith
Hmm.
nowadays. But yeah, I think that we want to make this just uh a podcast for all, a podcast um for those who don't believe anymore, for those who
Hmm.
do still believe, for those who believe something else. Um, and just a place to really be open and talk about our experiences and whether it
Yeah.
was good or bad, like just having this
And
open conversation.
yeah, like just because we both had horrible experiences, it doesn't mean that people that were raised IFB are automatically have like they automatically had a bad childhood. It doesn't mean that they that there was anything wrong with their upbringing just because they were raised IFB. Like, people that are raised IFB can have a good childhood. We just didn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it depends a lot on the church. It depends a lot on the preacher, and it depends on so many different things. So
Yeah.
if you were raised IFB and you had a great childhood, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I am so glad that you didn't have to experience any of the crap that we did.
Mhm.
And just because we had bad experiences does not invalidate those that had
Yeah.
good experiences. Um,
And I'd
like,
like to clarify too is uh I had a good childhood like with my parents and
sure,
with my family.
sure,
It was just the IFB
yeah,
really, really, really messed up like me
yeah,
and our family dynamic, to be honest.
yeah.
There's just been a lot of drama and stuff that has happened within our family due to the IFB and due to
Mm-hmm.
like this heavy, heavy religion. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. And yeah, it's very interesting when you look at the difference in everybody that was raised in IFB. Like, some people are still IFB, some people are, they still go to church, they're non-denominational. There are some that believe in God that don't believe in church. That's where I'm at.
Mhm.
And then there are others that don't believe in God at all. There are agnostics. Like, there are so many different
Yeah.
places that we all land, and different opinions that we all have about just about everything. But one thing that I'm loving about this community that we're kind of building, with people that used to go to our church and our school and others, is that no matter where we land on the spectrum, there's zero hate, there's zero
Yeah.
judgment. And even if we disagree on things, like, we've had conversations where, we've explained our sides, our points of view, and we just come down on different sides.
Yeah.
And I am loving, loving, loving the fact that that's okay. That just because I have a different
Yeah.
opinion doesn't mean that I'm inherently wrong or
I think
going
that
to hell.
that's something that's super detrimental to
Yes.
the IFB and to like the whole religious MAGA, all of that, where it's like there's no, for them, it's black and white. And life is not black and white. There's
It's
no black
not.
and white. It's all gray.
It's
Okay? We
miserable living in the
all
black and white. It's
It
miserable.
really is. The negativity that you bring with you all the time of just like the world's gonna end, the world's gonna end. Oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
like this is awful. There's so much negativity that comes with believing all of these things, right? And for me, after leaving church, I was like, oh my God, like I'm so free of all of these things. I don't even
Yes.
care about what you wear anymore. I don't care about the drama that Sister Susan wore jeans. I don't know.
The
Okay? Like,
horror. I will
you know what
say
I mean?
though,
Like, I
like,
really don't care anymore. I'm so free of all those things and it's awesome.
yeah, I will say, like, and we've talked about this a little bit before, like, that little niblet in my brain that is all of the brainwashing and all of the, hardcore preaching and everything that was drilled into me for so long is still there. I don't know if that's ever going to
Yeah.
leave, because at the
No,
core
I
of who
mean,
I am, there are things that I believe very firmly.
mhm.
And a lot of those
Do
are
you,
very different than what I was raised with. But
okay.
that little brainwashing kind of, thing that still sits in my brain immediately rushes to judgment, immediately rushes to no, that's not right. And
Well, that's
oh, it's
called
so
religious
hard.
trauma.
It is, yeah.
And thankfully, it's being finally noticed as like a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
a real trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
um, hopefully, our
It,
podcast is one that helps those with religious trauma like ours.
yeah.
And it's just opening the conversation to having religious trauma. It's like we have it
It
and it's
exists.
okay.
Yup.
It exists and it's okay. And we can talk about it and we need to do whatever we can to like help our community and
Mm-hmm.
to help those in the future to not go through the things that we went through.
Yep.
And
And honestly, that's at the
yeah.
core. We started talking this episode about why we even wanted to do this, and that is at the core, is to try to prevent it from continuing to happen. Like, there is a lot that we can do together as adults or, you know, older teenagers or whoever that have kind of aged out and made our own decisions to get out of that.
Mhm.
But there are so many kids still in it. And
Yeah.
honestly, like that is my biggest driving factor behind everything that I am doing about this, behind talking about it, behind doing all of the other stuff behind the scenes. Like, that is my biggest driving thing, is there are kids that are actively being hurt. And if
Yeah.
there's anything that I can do to make it stop or at least make it less, I'm going to do it in
Yeah.
whatever form that looks like. I'm really proud of that. And we don't really get to say that as Baptist kids. Like, we're never proud of
Yeah.
ourselves because it's not humble. It's not, you know, there's no humility in being proud of yourself.
Well, you have to be selfless and basically hate
Exactly.
yourself
Pretty
kind
much,
of
yeah.
thing,
But I
which
am
has
proud of,
never made sense.
yeah, no,
It's
it's so
never made
stupid.
sense to me because if God loves us no matter what, like,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have to hate ourselves and why do we have to change so much about ourselves? Like,
It doesn't make sense.
it
If
doesn't make
God
any
loves
sense.
us and God made us and God created us, why would we
And he
hate
created us
ourselves?
perfect.
Mm-hmm. Fearfully and
So
wonderfully
then,
made.
so then why are we not perfect?
Why are we taught to? It's
Why are
interesting,
we
like the
sinners?
paradoxes that happen when you actually look at what you're taught versus what the Bible says. The Bible says that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My pastor and my Sunday school teachers disagree, whether they pretend
Well,
to
but
believe in it or
there's
not.
also in the Bible as well where it's like, where we are, it does say that we're sinners, like that
Right,
we're all sinners and that we all need Jesus to be able
right.
to be whole and to make it to heaven. I I've learned that one of the biggest things that I'm going to teach my kids is that they are whole and they are everything they need within themselves. They are enough and
Yep.
they're enough. They just need themselves and that's it. And you don't need anyone
That is
else to
such
make
an
you whole.
important
You are whole
lesson.
within yourself.
That
Yes.
is
And
such an important thing to raise a kid with, because I've never felt like that, even as an
exactly.
adult. Like,
I still don't feel like that.
I don't feel like that. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm a lot healthier and I'm a lot more whole than I used to be, but I am still really fucking broken, in a
Yeah,
lot of ways, and
exactly.
it's because of the church.
Yeah. It's very confusing. I think that the Bible contradicts itself in a lot of ways as well. And like
It
there's a
does.
lot there's a lot, obviously between the Old Testament and the New Testament that are like
There are different
radically
gods
different.
in the Old
Yeah,
Testament and the
radically
New
different.
Testament. Like, it's
Exactly.
crazy. And not only that, like, yes, I believe the Bible does contradict itself, and that's because it was written by men. Like, whether it was
Yes, yeah.
inspired by God or whatever you
It
want
was
to
written
believe about
by a
that,
lot
it
of
was
different men.
penned by men, different
Yes.
men. And I think that that's one of the
And
reasons that we find a lot of contradictions.
there's a lot more books that could have
Right,
been within the Bible as well,
right,
but never made it. So there's stuff that we're missing too,
right.
if that makes
And
sense.
so, not only
Um,
that, like, not only are there inconsistencies within the Bible itself, but there are so many inconsistencies in what the doctrine of the IFB church says and how the people behave.
mhm.
It's so
I think
interesting to me.
the biggest thing is like the whole idea of like what you look like, what you wear, what you
Mm-hmm.
say, every single
That's
little thing that
not
you
in the
do.
Bible.
Yeah,
That's
that part
not
is
in the
definitely not.
Bible.
Like God never said we can't wear jeans,
Nope.
just so you know.
No,
That's
he did
not
not.
actually. Jesus himself did not say, "You shall not wear jeans." Like he never said that, okay?
The 11th
There's nothing
commandment:
in the
women
Bible.
must not wear pants. No.
You shall not wear pants.
Oh my lord.
There's
No, that's
literally
not in the Bible.
nothing. Yeah, there's nothing in the Bible that says that. So let's stop all the lies.
No, my pastor said
And
that.
yeah,
My God didn't say that. My pastor said that. There's a lot of things
exactly.
that, like, that's been a huge part of my, like, deconstruction process that I'm still working through, is, did God say that or did my pastor say that?
Exactly.
And if my pastor said that but God didn't say that, then why on earth am I still believing that?
Also, just because you're deconstructing does not mean that you're deconverting. There's a big
Bro,
difference.
no.
There's a huge negativity around deconstructing. It's not the same thing.
No.
I've deconverted.
Yeah.
Josie's deconstructing. It's
Right.
completely different. And to
It is
this
so
day, I'm
different.
still deconstructing. I think I
Yeah.
will forever be deconstructing.
I think
My
so too.
faith, the way that I was raised, you can deconstruct anything. You can deconstruct any belief
You
of
can
any kind.
deconstruct a sandwich, for God's sake. Like, you can do,
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
I,
But the
and
thing
it's
is,
not a bad
yeah,
word.
it's
I
not
think
a
is what we're trying
negative.
to get at.
Yeah,
It's not a bad word.
we're trying to, yeah, let's normalize it and make sure that it's not like a negative
Yeah.
thing because it's not. It's okay to think
Think for
about things.
yourself.
Yeah, it's
Ask
okay to think
questions.
about
Be
why,
curious.
like why aren't we allowed to go to the movie theaters? Why aren't we allowed to wear pants?
Mm-hmm.
Why do women have to care so much about what they wear and men don't have to?
Yep.
There's a lot of things
Blindly
that it's
following
okay.
rules, historically, whether it's religious or not, blindly
Mhm.
following rules is not a good thing, is not productive.
Exactly.
It doesn't encourage any kind of progress. Like, blindly
That's
following
why
rules
with my
is
kids, I
not where it's
have
at.
not drilled into my kids obedience is the very best thing because it's
Oh
not.
my God. You just put that song in my
You're
head. Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
Uh,
Obedience is the
is the
very
very
best
best
thing.
thing. Oh my God. Oh,
It taught us to spell obedience though. So
yes,
thank
it
you for
did.
that.
It did. No, obedience
We'll
is
give
not
you
the very
that.
best thing. Obedience is not the very
No,
best thing.
it is not.
Curiosity and, like, progress, those are the best
Well,
things.
because I don't want my kids to sorry, my tablet is going off. I don't know if it's
You're
getting
fine.
recorded.
I
Um
can hear it, but it's fine.
Yeah. But I just want to say that like I have taught my kids to not blindly obey
Mm.
adults.
Yep.
We do not want our kids
Oh.
to blindly obey adults, okay?
Oh my
Like we
gosh.
just don't. That is such a recipe for disaster. That's a
Absolutely
huge
is.
reason why so many people are being um taken advantage of as children
Yeah.
because we have to like you have to respect the pastor, you have to respect your elders, you have to
Any
respect
person,
adults.
yeah, like elder, the blanket term,
Hmm.
respect your elders. I can't even begin to tell you how many teenagers used that on me. Like, when I was,
Exactly.
10, 11, 12, and other kids were like 15, 16. Oh, you have to do what I say because of your elder. Like,
Did
just
they
because you
really?
are, oh yeah, so many times.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh,
God,
that's
so many
scary.
times. And
That's so scary.
yeah, just because you were born a few years, 10 years, 20 years before somebody does not mean that you automatically deserve respect for them. And that is a hill that I will die on. Like,
Yeah, it's
that,
true.
and especially when you're a kid, that is such a dangerous thing to teach because all of these teachings and the way that people in the IFB tend to raise their children open the door for predators. So,
Exactly. It
so
makes
many
it,
parts
yeah,
of it.
it
And that's a
makes it a
big one.
perfect
Unconditional
area.
obedience is such, it is so easy to take advantage of as a predator.
Exactly.
Like, that's what they look for.
Yep, exactly. I'm very much for allowing my kids to say no to hugs.
Yes.
If grandma wants a
I
hug
ask
and my
kids,
child doesn't want a
like,
hug, my daughter asks. She literally, I'm like, she'll be like, "Can I hug this person?" And I said, "You need to ask. You have to ask her."
yes, yes,
We are teaching consent. We are teaching boundaries. And
yes.
that
And that's so
matters.
important. So
Exactly.
important. Do not make your kids touch somebody they don't want to touch.
Hmm.
And also, just because they don't want to touch somebody doesn't necessarily mean they're not safe. But if your kid consistently does not want to touch somebody, maybe we
It
need to
could
think
be a
about
red
that
flag.
person's
Yeah,
involvement in our child's life. Like, it's definitely a red
exactly.
flag.
Listen to your children.
Yes. And that is
Like,
another thing that's wrong with,
keep an
like,
eye.
raising kids in the IFB is, like, nobody listens to their kids. Like,
Yeah.
your kids can say something and you'll just write it off because, oh, that's not how things work, or because they're a child, they should be seen and not heard. And that is disgusting. And again, opens the door
Your
for
children
predators.
were literally put on this earth by you,
They didn't choose
and
to be born. You chose to
they
make that
did not
happen.
choose to be born. They didn't choose to be here. You owe it to them. You owe them
Yes.
that protection. They don't owe
Yes.
you anything.
Nope.
Your children don't owe you anything. You owe them that protection. You owe them the right to be
Unconditional
believed.
love.
Exactly. Safety, love, understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they deserve.
Yep.
And that's what we stand for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly.
No disagreement on that whatsoever.
So,
So,
if you liked this episode,
yes.
please, please, please give it a like and subscribe and share it with your friends, with your IFB friends, with your non-religious friends.
Yep.
We are trying to just build a beautiful community here, and hopefully
Yes.
we'll start, a Facebook page that we can all come together and talk about just all the different things, whether it's heavy topics or just silly topics about not
Yeah.
wearing jeans and stupid things like that. But we are here, and if you want to reach out, please email us at cultconfessions
KJV.
kjv@gmail.com.
Also, by the way,
We'll
KJV does not stand for King James Version. We just thought it was a
no.
fun play because Christy and Josie. So, yeah.
Yes. Christy and Josie, and my last name's Vestal, so
Yes. Mine isn't, but
yeah.
but that's fine.
Um, we're a partnership, so
Absolutely.
you're basically a Vestal.
I'm an
But yes,
adopted Vestal
please,
now.
we
Yay.
will we will put everything down below. We'll link everything down below for
Yep.
all of our socials, all of our um everything that we need to put down there for you guys to connect with us. Um, but yeah,
Please, and
please
yeah,
reach out
like,
if you have a
please reach
story.
out. Email
Yeah,
us, Facebook message us. I mean, we are more than happy to talk to you, even if you're not ready to be anywhere in public and you just want somebody to talk to share your story and see if there's, help that can be had. We're here to listen.
exactly. We're
Absolutely here
here
to
to
listen.
help. We have, you know, limited resources, but we will use the resources that we have to help you, and we
Yeah,
will do everything in our power to help you. So
absolutely.
please reach out.
So thank you everybody for listening, for tuning in. Lots more to come. We are going to be talking about some really awkward things that pastors have written about sex. We're going to be talking about just a lot of different weird rules that we had and comparing some of those experiences. We're going to be talking about some deeper stuff like, is the independent fundamental Baptist movement really a cult? We're going to be talking about a lot of things coming up. So if there's also anything that you'd like us to cover or you want to know what we think about something, let us know. We can talk about whatever. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Bye.